This is a solvable problem, by the way. Right? This is a solvable problem. It takes us going, we want to know everything about AI agents and services and features that are crossing our threshold. We want to know what they are accessing. Once we commit ourselves to that level of intellectual curiosity, we put ourselves on the pathway. This is not a new issue. AI security has some new aspects to it that I'm going to discuss in just a minute, but this is not a new problem. We've gone through this through every technology evolution that has ever happened. When we think about our own experiences, this has happened with, who remembers the days of the big data explosion, right? Big data was out of control. Like, we ran into issues relative to data classification because we had all of this big data that we were combing through, and then people were combing through stuff that was private, confidential, personal, and we had to go through this whole data classification exercise that we never finished, by the way. I told you I've been a security practitioner for a long time. Nobody ever finished their data classification program. But when we take a look at things like the rise of cloud was very insecure in the early days, right? When we take a look at the rise of SaaS applications, very insecure in the early days. Why? Because we're always developing to deliver business value before we let the folks in security know that we're screwing things up, right? That's the way that it works. Is there anybody that disagrees that security is always last? Didn't think so, right? This is a difficult part of our job, right? And once we embrace the fact that things get ahead of us in security, then we can start to understand how we can catch up, right? And I do think there's something really interesting about AI. We have this chance here to finally catch up. So what do we do about this, right? I've set the table here for a little bit more detailed conversation about, okay, what do we do about it? What are the problem statements here? Well, the great philosopher Ricky Bobby said there ain't nothing more damn frightening than getting in a car with a cougar. So guess what? AI is the cougar in the car, right? And the most important thing that we have to recognize is that in order to be successful in what we're trying to do in secure, govern, and control AI, is we have to embrace the cougar, right? We have to sit down and go, all right, AI can be dangerous, AI can be scary, AI can be frustrating. AI is a new attack vector that we need to worry about. We need to accept that fact. And once we accept that fact, again, our intellectual curiosity as security practitioners kicks in, and we begin to find pathways to this problem. So when we think about, addressing the AI elephant in the room, from a security practitioner side, there's something that we need to understand. And I find this very difficult personally because I've been for a long time. Imagine being an identity practitioner at the JP Morgan Chase level. And imagine now being reeled forward 10 or 12 years, and I'm still seeing all of the annual reports come out that say 80 to 85% of all breach, hacks, and exploits have to do with identity, fraudulent credentials, account takeover. Like, we've made no progress in this space. Right? If you're an identity person, you feel like the least successful person in security because we still haven't fixed these issues. But I can tell you, because we haven't fixed these issues, I see the same patterns repeat over and over and over again. Like, somebody posts in the newspaper, this was a really sophisticated attack. And then like 2 months later, it comes out, oh, it was forged credentials. That's not sophisticated, right? But when we see this repeat of things, we begin to believe that everything in security is the same. And that's why it's difficult for me to make this statement. I do believe that AI security is different. And let me tell you why. So when we think about what's currently going on with AI security, there's another piece that we need to acknowledge about our roots. I've always loved this diagram. It was created by Northrop Grumman in 2010, was the first edition. This is an iteration of another diagram that was created in 1983 by the Department of Defense. And I always love when people argue about standards and frameworks, right? Because this is defense in depth. However, if you strip away the outer layer in the defense in depth, this is also the OSI 7-layer model. And if you're hard down the trail of zero trust, we can have another conversation about that another time. ZT is basically this, but you verify and validate everything that's going through every single layer, right? That's the short version of ZT. It doesn't matter which of these you do, right? The reality is most companies are still stuck in an OSI 7-layer world in a cloud universe, which is problematic for a number of different reasons. But that's just the way that it is. But the reason that I think AI security is different is because everything that we've built in security up until this time protects static assets. Matter of fact, it protects the most important static asset of all times, which is the data in the middle. As my buddy John Kindervag likes to say, the crunchy outside, hard shell outside, and the soft center. Well, think about AI's relationship with the soft center, with data. But don't think about it from the standpoint of the data, think about it from the standpoint of AI itself, right? We built security frameworks to protect static assets. Simple question, is AI static? I didn't hear anybody. Is AI static? No. AI is dynamic. By design, AI is dynamic. It evolves, it changes, its behaviors shift. So we have an entire fortress that's built on protecting static assets, and we are introducing AI as a dynamic asset into our environments. It is different. It may be the only big different thing in the remainder of our working professional careers as security practitioners. Now, I say that, and it sounds scary, but it also should sound hopeful. Because if we recognize it early enough as security practitioners and close that gap on being behind everything that's being developed so that it's shorter, that it's not 7 or 8 years like API security was, but it's 1 or 2 years, we stand a better chance of being successful in protecting the digital environment for everybody. So when we think about this, they're not static. I like to think of AI services and agents as vampires. You have to invite them in. And once you invite them in, you have no idea what kind of damage they're going to wreak once they are allowed in. The best example that I can give of this is the reality that if you approve or sanction an AI agent to come in your environment, this reinforces the static reality that we're facing. You're typically going to give it some type of static authentication token, and it can get in all the time. And guess what? In the identity world, the reality is authenticate once, allow always has worked out really terribly badly, right? And we're doing the exact same thing with AI agents and services, right? We approve once, we allow them in. The problem is we go back to AI being an evolutionary animal. And because it can be retrained to decide that it needs different data inside of your environment, and because usually the tokens and encryption that are associated with the tail end of those API calls to get into more detailed data don't have any controls on them, they can be used, which all hackers do, to steer to other data elements that they weren't approved for. So that vampire is in there sucking out all of this data that you never authorized it to do. Why? Because you invited it in to begin with. So we have to think about how these AI agents behave. Like I said, you can't see what they're doing. AI agents, services, features change, evolve, shift, and learn. If there is one tidbit or nugget that you as security practitioners walk away from and are thinking about in the middle of the night, I want it to be this. How do I change my security focus and my security controls and my security governance in a way that adapts to the reality of an evolving asset in my environment? So with that said, I'm going to leave a couple minutes for questions here. I'm doing pretty good on time. But I want to talk a little bit about the reality of AI governance, security, and control. Now, if you've been around the industry a long time like I have, you know that we typically don't jam all those words together, right? We love to talk about those things within their independent silos. GRC, audit, security, DevOps, right? Everybody has their lane. The reality is that AI, as well as the reality of cloud, is causing convergence across all of these frontiers. So if I think about approval of the use of an AI agent feature or service within my organization, there should be a front-side approval process, which is the typical governance aspect that we understand. Those governance aspects are typically driven by business needs, not by security needs. Right? We're talking about company risk appetites, company policies, legal requirements, compliance requirements. Those are where those decision processes are happening on the governance side. And once we get through those hurdles, it's coming back for security review. right? And yes, this is the old DevOps infinity loop, but I think it applies to a lot of different things that we should be doing within our organizations. And once it goes through security evaluation, the use cases are approved, I'm starting to apply controls and I authorize to operate. But now I come back around to the reality of an evolutionary AI asset in my environment. If it changes, I need to know about it. And if it changes, it needs to loop back around for re-review and reauthorization and reapproval. It becomes this golden continuous infinity loop on how we need to manage AI in our environments. And if we're not doing it, we cannot resolve or mitigate business and operations risk, which trends back to the inside of our organizations, and cyber risks, which are external to our organizations, right? If we're not managing AI usage and consumption in our organizations holistically. So with that, I'm going to leave off for questions. I'd love if anybody has any that they can toss at me. Oh, come on, I'm not that good. No way. Somebody's got a question or two. Well, geez, Richard, how do I see all of these AI agent services and features? Well, so let's think a little bit about what I said about AI development, right? If we think about AI development internally, a lot of that is happening within isolated instances, labs, things that have a pretty tight set of controls around them, right? I actually don't think that there's been much relative to strong security reviews and those types of actions for internal AI development deployment yet. But I actually think that those will build out naturally, organically, and probably be pretty effective, right? The external, you have to have the capability to be able to collect and enrich contextualized data from other sources. So in our world today, obviously, we prefer to be agentless, right? But here's the good news. There's tons of things in your environment that are collecting and recognizing AI-related traffic. Why? And this is why an old identity guy got into AI. Did you know that every AI agent, feature, and service has a UID? Yep. Every AI has an identity, which is kind of freaky if you think about it. Because when we think about the history of virtualization, you know, we virtualized the tech stack first, then we virtualized traffic, right? Got all the way to the API layer. You realize that AI is the virtualization of the human factor? Now, I'll leave off as the remainder of the answer to this question. If I give you one more thing to be afraid of, how great have we been at managing the security relative to human factor behaviors in our organizations? There you go. So look, if there's anything that I can be a help with, I will leave off the presentation by saying, this code does not go to my company. This code does not go to to an email list. 50% of my job is for Singular. 50% of my job is to be a help in the market. If you've seen me speak before, I have a pretty sizable brand in the cybersecurity community. I travel all around the world. I'm an anthropologist and archaeologist of use cases. And I get to go places and then come back and have conversations in St. Louis where somebody goes, that's never gonna happen. And I go, well, I can give you 3 people's names in Sydney, Australia that are already doing it, right? I am a resource for you. So if I can be a help of any kind, this is directly to my own LinkedIn, I am happy to do so.